I feel like the Britney Spears of social change with my cool mic. So, all right. Maybe I'll dance, maybe I won't. I hope lunch was great, and now let's work through the post-lunch slog with, I'm going to try and be as exciting as possible to keep you awake. My name is Jeff Jordan, and I come from Rescue, which is based in San Diego, California. As Timo said, we've been around for almost 20 years now, and it did begin in high school when I joined my health department's anti-tobacco group and questioned why it was that all the youth that we were talking to didn't smoke cigarettes and never were going to go smoke cigarettes, and why we never actually talked to the teens that were smoking cigarettes. And it was that initial insight of mismatching our public health message with our actual public health audience that launched Rescue and launched the ideas that we continue to work through today. And like I said, we're based in the States. Timo kind of gave a lot of these talking points already. But one of the most important things about us is our science focus. And so we, in addition to all of the behavior change marketing services that we do, we also have an in-house research department with MPHs and PhDs that are focused on doing the research necessary to build our campaigns, to advance the theories that we use, and really to contribute to the field. And we have research partnerships that continue to grow, as well as a newest one here with Griffith that we're excited to be working on. And don't forget to tweet. This is a very Twitter-engaged audience. I will be tweeting while I'm speaking, and it is up to you to figure out how I did that. Okay, so changing behavior is a burden. Now, this is a really, really important thing to keep in mind, because we often think about behavior change in isolation. We think about what we care about, which is that one behavior that we want people to change, and that's all we think about, right? How to change it, how to convince them, what's the next thing we can tell them, what's the next thing we can show them, what's the next law we can pass to motivate them. But behavior change doesn't happen in isolation. The behaviors that we're asking people to change are part of a complex web of life experiences, of other behaviors that are going on, of other motivators and competing interests and competing things that are competing for our energy and time. And we can't expect people to just focus on us and the behavior we want them to change. And we also can't continue to put that burden on them. Right? Behavior change is a burden, and our job as behavior change agents is not just to try and tell people to change their behavior, but our job is to really understand these burdens. So here's an example. This is Bob, okay? And Bob would love to lose some weight, all right? And we would love Bob to lose some weight. And now, a lot of times, what we will do is we will just, put out commercials and put out educational programs telling him why he should, telling him, how harmful these behaviors are, how he's going to get diabetes, how he might die early. But Bob isn't thinking as much about that. Bob is thinking about everything that's going on. The first thing he's thinking about is he doesn't have time to cook, so he doesn't know how to get some of those healthier foods. He lives in a neighborhood with few healthy options, so he doesn't actually know where to buy these healthier foods. He can't afford a lot of these healthy foods. He's low income, and he's just scraping by. He doesn't have time or access to a gym or park to go and exercise. He isn't sure which foods are actually healthy, right? So he keeps hearing people telling him to eat healthier, but he doesn't know exactly where he's going wrong. He doesn't know how to cook healthier foods. He mainly knows how to cook his unhealthy foods that he's cooked for so long. He believes manly men only eat certain foods, and so a lot of those healthy foods are kind of off the table because, if he's like, if I can't pronounce it, I probably shouldn't be eating it. And he frequently drinks and eats fried foods with his friends, and he's not sure how to navigate within a social environment, how not to eat the wings and ranch sauce and all of that, and French fries or chips. He just knows that that's what he does with his friends. So these are his real life burdens, okay? And when we as behavior change agents tell him to eat healthier, tell him that he should change, we're just putting more pressure on him. We're not actually making it any easier for him to change. And I challenge you to think of your job not as what you should tell people what to do, but that your job as a behavior change agent is to actually reduce the burdens of change. Find burdens that your audience is facing and change them, challenge them. They could be actual physical burdens, like his neighborhood, his access, his how easy it is to actually be able to do these behaviors. Or it can be these kind of psychological burdens, the things that he doesn't know how to work through, his identity, and he doesn't know how to connect his identity with the healthy behaviors we want him to do. Changing any one of these burdens makes it easier for Bob to be able to make this change. And since we're the ones getting paid to care about this stuff, we should be the ones that are working hard to figure out how to make it easier for him to change. So, behavior change, when behavior change actually happens, it's because we've reduced some of these physical or psychological burdens to change. Sometimes inadvertently, we got lucky, but sometimes directly. Really, really good behavior change programs, they know what they're targeting. They're not just targeting a problem, they're actually targeting specific factors that go into the behavior that we want changed. So we talked about these two categories, right? Physical and psychological burdens. Now, you can choose any of these. You can choose to change any of them, and you will make your audience's life easier, and you will make that healthy behavior easier. On the physical side, you have a lot of options. You have things like the cost, making healthy behaviors more affordable, making unhealthy behaviors less affordable. The environment, how does my physical environment actually make this possible? Access, so can I actually reach what I need to be able to reach to be able to do this behavior? Is it safe for me to do this behavior in my neighborhood, in my setting? And can I physically do this behavior? Is there a way you can help me be able to physically do it more easily? And then on the psychological side, we have a lot of options too. The most obvious one is knowledge, helping me understand why I should do this behavior, right? What's in it for me? How would it benefit me in my life? And the skills of what it would take to actually do this behavior, as well as relevance. Why should someone like me, in my situation, do this behavior, right? Not someone like you in your government or nonprofit job. Why do you care about it? But why should I care about it? Confidence, can someone like me do it, right? A lot of people don't really believe that they can make those changes. Norms, do people like me actually do this behavior, or is it just people who look like you who do this behavior? And oftentimes we kind of reinforce those norms of what health looks like and don't challenge them and show how different kinds of people can engage in healthy behaviors. And then value. How will I feel from doing it? Will I feel like regret from not doing the thing I wanted to do and doing this instead? Or can you help me feel proud of actually doing this change and make it feel like a valuable thing in my life? So there's all these options, and you can choose any of them to make your behavior change program more effective. But what I'm going to focus on today is particularly this category of psychological burdens, because we don't talk about them enough in behavior change. Specifically relevance, confidence, norms, and value, right? How do we make people feel like changing more? Not just telling them to change, not just telling them why they should change, but actually feel like change can be a part of who they are and a part of what they care about. So let's go through a few examples of a few people and understand really what psychological burdens actually look like. So this young lady, let's call her Alex, right? Alex has been using drugs since she was in middle school. And she started using drugs because she was feeling down. She was feeling, really frustrated with her home situation. There was divorce. There was, she felt they weren't paying attention to her, weren't really helping her with her issues, and she didn't know how to work through that. And her friends told her, oh, well, if you, start smoking some weed, start maybe taking this pill, it'll make you feel better, and it did. And so now, a few years later, she's in high school, and she's pretty much self-medicating. She has depended on these illegal drugs to get over the things that she faces every day. And when she hears messages about drugs are bad and you just shouldn't use drugs, she has no idea what people are talking about. Those people do not understand what she's going through, what role drugs play in her life, and how she might ever consider not using them. Take another example. This very nice abuela here, grandma here. In her culture, it is normal to show love through food. And to show that love by filling up a kid's plate and their grandkids' plate, and not just filling it up, but making them clean that plate off and then giving them seconds. And the more food that you give your family, the more love you have for them. And she doesn't understand what her doctors keep telling her, that, she's overweight, that her daughter's overweight, that her grandkids are overweight. She's like, oh, well, but they're overweight means they're happy and loved. It means, that is a sign that this family takes care of itself. And so she has trouble understanding how it is that she can reconcile this idea of risk that's coming from these practices that are so culturally ingrained and so normal for her and so connected to actually how she shows love for her family. And finally here, we have Jack. And Jack knows he should be doing more physical activity. He's been told by his doctor multiple times, but he doesn't really know how physical activity would fit into his world. You know, him and his buddies, they hang out. They're just kind of drinking on the porch. They couldn't imagine kind of, well, we're going to go for a walk. You know, that's weird. Guys don't do that. He can't really imagine himself going to a gym. It's like, I don't even know where a gym is. And so he really, it's like he keeps being told he should do these things, but he just cannot even imagine what it would look like for someone like him to begin being physically active. It just seems so foreign to his world and his reality. All three of these folk have heard our messages. They have heard what they should do, but no one has helped them figure out how that can become a reality within their world, within the realities of their burdens and their situation. And so I challenge you that your job is not to tell them what they should be doing, but to help them figure out how it can be real within their world and help them work through some of these real burdens that they're facing. Unfortunately, public health tends to always look like a stock photo. And this is, while silly, the problem with this is that we've kind of made a stereotype of what health looks like. And what that's done is for a lot of people who live in different subcultures, in different ethnic groups, in different cultures, that they don't see themselves in a lot of the health messages that we put out there. That health looks like it's a mainstream thing for people who kind of fit within mainstream culture. And that anyone who's different in any way, whether it's because of income, whether it's because of their ethnicity or their culture, or it's because of just their upbringing or their beliefs or values, that anyone who's different from that mainstream culture, that health isn't really for them. That you almost have to buy into this world of multicultural happiness sitting on the stairs, in order to even consider being healthy. And I know that's not what we intend, right? When we use images like this, we intend to make them as generally appealing as possible. But the challenge is that there's no such thing as generally appealing. Everything appeals to somebody and doesn't appeal to somebody else. And when we choose images that represent the center of culture, what we do is we ignore all the fringes of culture where it happens to be that the vast majority of health risks actually live. So what do? Well, these psychological burdens can be removed by creating new associations between identities and behaviors, by creating new images, new worlds that we can imagine how we want the world to actually be, and show people this is what it looks like for someone like you to engage in this new healthy behavior and why it benefits someone like you. So how do we do this? Well, this is a big move, right? This is moving from what I would call a little bit of our own selfish desires that people should change for the following reasons that my organization or my funder cares about, and actually shifting to, okay, this is why this change would be beneficial to this person and how it would actually work for them within their world. And it would probably look really different than it looks for me in my world. Marketing itself is all about making promises. And we don't often recognize this as much within behavior change marketing. What we don't recognize is that in the commercial world, promises are just kind of created by marketers. They don't necessarily always focus on the real features of their products. They make promises about how you will feel after you engage in a behavior, who you will be when you buy this product, how you can see yourself after you do this thing. And we don't take advantage of that power of marketing enough. We get stuck in reality. We get stuck in reality of health consequences and risks or health benefits, and we don't pay enough attention to the norms and the psychological part of change, which is how would it make you feel? How should it make you feel? How do I want it to make you feel? New promises can actually challenge the norms, to change these behaviors. So we can make promises that people of these different cultures and these different fringe groups can actually achieve what they want in their lives more successfully by engaging in our healthy behaviors. We just have to kind of move out of the rigidness of real facts and move into the world of feeling, move into the world of identity, of norms, and realize that all of that is make-believe. It is make-believe that has been created by humans and cultures and advertisers for centuries, and that we have every right to participate in that make-believe world by creating our own norms and putting out there the version of the world that we want to see come to life. So let's take a quick lesson in those that have created our problems and figure out what kind of norms they have made, right? McDonald's succeeded by associating its products with a healthy, happy family. And for decades, it was the symbol of the American family, and that's where the American family went and ate, and that there was nothing wrong with that. That was actually a good thing for a family to do together. We have something like Marlboro that has associated smoking with being manly and being a rebel, being rugged, being strong. We have another cigarette brand that we have in the U.S. called Natural American Spirit that has associated smoking with being organic and hipster and, no additives, just the normal cancer that's caused by tobacco on its own, right? And Mountain Dew, who has told us that the only way to really be extreme and cool and adventurous is to drink this fluorescent soda as you engage in these sport activities, not to mention that carbonated drinks while engaging in sport activities makes you feel kind of funky, but Mountain Dew doesn't matter. It's Mountain Dew. So let me show you a little bit about how they create these images out of nowhere, out of thin air. Let's see if we get this one.
That's so impossible. That's not supposed to go there. Doesn't know me well. 'Cause I know that today holds more. Yeah, so much more. So much more.
Well, look at that. You can be an environmentalist by eating sun chips, right? And so now, by kind of making their bag compostable, it's not just the fact that it's compostable, it is now the fact that environmentalists, right, can feel proud about eating this pretty unhealthy food. And it just further associates these things that really have absolutely no association with each other, right? There's nothing to do with eating chips and helping the world. But Sun Chips would like you to believe that there is. And it works. Sun Chips is branded in the U.S. I'm not sure if they are here in Australia, but they're branded in the U.S. as the healthy snack for do-gooders because, it has that whole grain and that compostable bag. Let's look at another example.
My name's Ron, and I lost 80 pounds on Nutrisystem.
Men, pay attention. Have a big belly? Want to raise your testosterone? Like to have more energy? Even get in the new pants? Then lose weight with Nutrisystem for men.
I'm Essex, and I lost 43 pounds on Nutrisystem.
Lose 15 pounds and 7 inches overall in your first month. Lose weight fast. Money back guarantee.
Wow, right? So here is, hey, guys don't diet, right? So how can we make dieting more manly? Well, this company decided to go all in on the manly side, literally, and start to form associations between the idea of being a man and being strong and eating manly food with the idea of dieting. Now, in both of these cases, these are just things that people around the room decided to associate with each other. Right? They have no real association in the real world, right? We're not talking about correlation, scientific associations. We're talking about literally an advertiser thinking creatively of how they can bring two things that normally don't go together and make them come together. Now, this is something that we can do. We don't have to do it quite as crude as Nutrisystem does, but we can do it in a way that will help our audience too. Whether it's chips for environmentalists or manly men weight loss, it's something really, really important for us to consider. Because when we don't do it, what happens is we just reflect the world as it already is. So let me show you an example of that.
To make wise food choices for you and your family, compare the nutrition information on food labels. Because healthy eating is worth it.
Healthy eating. It's for life.
Learn how the Nutrition Facts Table can help you choose healthier foods. Call 1-800-O-CANADA or visit our website. A healthy message from the Government of Canada.
So tell me about what you just saw there. Who is this person that you saw at the grocery store? What did she look like to you? Young. What else? Thin, trim. What else? White. Well, what? Slipped? Is that fashion? Oh, well slept. Okay, yes, well slept, yeah. I'm like, I thought I was learning a new Australian word. Yes, well slept, got it. What else? So obviously not a lot of stress in her life. She was a mother. What were you saying? She was literate. She could very quickly, and her child understood the nutrition label too, which is really incredible. Anything else? Yes. Shopping with your child is a fun experience, right? She was helping. She wasn't just throwing things in the cart. Okay. Now, what's the challenge here? So think about a person who actually is challenged by weight issues. Maybe doesn't have time to eat healthy, maybe has children that are not very well behaved and can't be taken to the grocery store, maybe doesn't necessarily have the education to understand what a nutrition label says. Put yourself in that person's shoes, and you see this ad, and what do you think? It's not for me, right? Of course she's healthy, look at her, right? She's got everything going for her. If I were that person, I would be healthy too, but I'm not. And therefore, I am going to continue to eat these chips, right? And that's the challenge, is that this is not a reimagining of the world. There are people who exist who look like this, good for them, and they live healthy lives. But that doesn't change anything about how we look at ourselves or how we look at the world. It doesn't affect anyone who's at risk. It doesn't make them rethink their world, rethink their behaviors, rethink what's possible. All it does is it kind of rubs it in their face that it's hard for you and it's easy for her, right? Reimagining the world is what marketing is designed to do. It's not just designed to reflect the world as it is. And unfortunately, this is how unhealthy norms begin. Here is a good example of how today this kind of normative advertising is being used to make our jobs even harder.
Sometimes you wanna go where everybody knows your name, and they're always glad you came. You wanna be where you can see our troubles are all the same. You wanna be where everybody knows your name. You wanna go where people know people are all the same. You wanna go where everybody knows your name.
All right. Nothing like a cool, crisp Michelob Ultra after burning 1,000 calories, right? This seems weird, doesn't it? Seems weird to see people just drinking right after working out. However, this is a deliberate attempt to change norms. This is an attempt by not just Michelob Ultra, but all these low-calorie beers who are trying to associate their beers with healthy living, whether it's eating healthy foods, as some of them are showing, or exercising and being fit. They're trying to make sure that they don't lose that audience and that audience also drinks a lot, right? And they do it by imagining the world the way they want it to be. They would love it if after every CrossFit session there was a bucket of beer outside. And so they show it that way. They show the world the way they wish it were. And the thing is that the more that people see these images, the more normal it gets. We hold ourselves back by only dealing in the current reality and by not showing the world the way we would want it to be, by showing the people who normally aren't healthy being healthy within their circumstances, within the reality of their world, right? And that's what they did. They showed the reality of the fitness world, the socialness of it, and showed kind of where beer could fit in, right? They said, probably unrealistic to show it while they're working out, so let's do it right after they work out, right? They thought about it, right? Where could it realistically fit? They're doing their job. As much as we disagree with what this ad is doing, it is a strategic and very, very smart move to reach a new audience. And we have to do the same. We have to break the stereotypes that constrain our own messages. To reduce the psychological burdens, we have to make promises that challenge behavioral norms, challenge who it is that typically performs these behaviors, what they look like, what the situations look like, what the circumstances look like. And we do this with 3 steps that are really important to keep in mind. The very first step you have to do is you have to segment. Those generic ads, those generic images, they come from the fallacy that we can reach everybody with our campaign. It just can't happen. There is no campaign, no commercial brand that everybody likes. Yes, there are commercial brands with pretty much 100% awareness, but there are just as many people as hate those brands as there are people who love those brands, right? So if no brand with their billions of dollars has been able to convince everybody to do what they want them to do, how is it that we could do it with our thousands of dollars? We can't. And so a lot of times we think, it's like, well, I don't have much money, so I can't really reach specific groups. I'm going to have to just try and reach everybody at once. You don't end up reaching anybody. Or you end up reaching the people who need to least hear your message, the healthiest people who live in the center of culture. So instead, we have to segment. And psychographics are the best way to segment, to be able to make sure not to leave anybody out, but to actually make sure you include the people who it's most important to reach. Who is that highest risk audience that you have to make sure to reach? Create segmentation around them, because they are going to be the ones that are most likely to be left out if we decide that our audience is everybody or an entire community. After we segment, we have to focus on their values. We have to find values, things that they care about, and associate those things with the healthy behavior. Right? It is our job to bring this association together. It's our job to figure out why this matters to them, not just why it matters to us. And then lastly, we need to tailor. We need to make sure that we design our messages and strategies based on the culture, value, and identity of the people that it is that we're trying to reach. Right? It has to look like them, sound like them, be in environments that they're familiar with, because that's the only way they'll actually pay attention. Right? We're bombarded with messages all day. We only pay attention to the ones that we think are most relevant to us. And so a lot of those generic messages, it's not that people even look at them and say, it's not for me. They don't even look at them because they don't see anything that their subconscious tells them, hey, look over here, pay attention. None of that is there. So they usually just don't even notice those campaigns. So let me show you very quickly. One of the ways that we segment, that first step for when we do our work with teenagers, is called peer crowds. And peer crowds are essentially the macro level connections between peer groups with similar interests, lifestyles, interests, and habits. And in the US, we found 5 peer crowds pretty much wherever we go, known as mainstream, popular, hip hop, country, and alternative. And even though communities are different, what we find that there may be different sizes of these peer crowds. For example, many more country teens in a smaller community, many more hip-hop teens in an urban community. What defines each of these peer crowds stays the same. So each community, yes, is different, but the peer crowds themselves and what the values that they believe in, the worldview that they have, remains consistent wherever we go. We have videos that kind of go deep into this if you're interested on our YouTube. But the reason that these peer crowds are so important is because so many youth risk behaviors are associated with your social environment, with your social group, right? A lot of studies show that either the number 1 or number 2 most predictive factor of whether a teenager is going to engage in a risk behavior is whether their friends engage in that risk behavior, right? So this is really important. We want to know, who are these friend groups? What are the groups that are more likely to do a risk behavior, and what are the groups that are less likely to do a risk behavior? And when we look at something like marijuana, for example, this is data from the state of Virginia, we see a very clear pattern. Right? For marijuana use, hip-hop teens are using at about 34%, which is more than double the 15.8% that the average Virginia teen uses. And mainstream teens are using significantly below average, at just 5.9%, right? So those generic campaigns would be reaching exactly who is least at risk to be engaged in this behavior. Now, without this information, what happens is that we can't effectively tailor our messages, right? If we say that our audience is just teenagers, right? Let's put yourselves in the shoes of someone, you're in the state of Virginia, you want to reduce marijuana use, and you want to do it amongst teenagers. If that's it, then you don't even know who is actually at risk. Without that segmentation, all you can say is, I just need to find some message that quote unquote teens will find appealing. And what happens in those cases, more often than not, is that we end up targeting the center of the road. And here's an example of that.
This looks harder. Okay, so let's start off by reading the directions.
Okay.
Right.
Combine the tens and ones. The first one has been done for you.
Nice job.
So here is a well-intentioned campaign trying to deliver some marijuana messaging to teens, but in their effort to just target teens, who did they end up targeting? Just mainstream teens, right? Center of the road, right? They're hanging out in the freaking library, right? They're pretty mainstream, right? And so this means that all those other groups, right, those high-risk groups, for example, like hip-hop teens, when they see an ad like this, what do you think that they think? They say, well, of course you don't smoke weed, right? You don't leave the library. You can't smoke in the library, right? It doesn't even register. It's like it has nothing to do with the way their life works. It has nothing to do with the reasons why they use marijuana. It has nothing to do with the reasons why they might choose not to use marijuana. It is just a completely different world. It is reinforcing the norms that already exist, right? They look at that kid and they say, of course he doesn't smoke, right? People like him don't smoke. So all you're doing is you're just telling me something that I already know. And so much public health and behavior change campaigns, they just do that. They just tell us what we already know. They just reinforce the world as we already know it. So what we have to do in order to truly cause change, in order to truly reduce the psychological burdens of change, is that we have to make new promises that challenge the stereotype of health. There is a stereotype. We all know, we can all imagine what a healthy person looks like, what a person who exercises look like, what a person who eats healthy looks like, what an organic granola, person looks like. We have all these stereotypes in our head. It's our job to make new ones that challenge all of those stereotypes and associate those same behaviors with people that have never been associated with those behaviors before. So, how we do that? Well, after we have this segmentation, this really, really good psychographic segmentation for your audience, we find that cultural value, we associate it with that behavior that we want to promote, and we develop tailored and targeted messages specifically for that psychographic audience. We don't try and reach more than one group at once because we end up watering down our message. We do something that we call lowest common denominator creative, where you're just trying to find the most generic thing that ties people together, and what you end up doing is you end up losing everybody, right? Because it's not deep and specific enough to reach any one person. So instead, we focus on that one group and we really find what works for them. And later on, you can target a different group, right? It's not about leaving anybody out. It's about making sure that you're effective with the work that you actually do, right? So let's take a look at some examples. So this first example is part of one of our federal campaigns, and its goal was to associate this idea, this audience, which was hip-hop teens. One of their values was to break the cycle of poverty. A lot of them were experiencing poverty, and a lot of them would talk about breaking the cycle. And so we wanted to kind of link to that and say, okay, how can we get them to associate not smoking with this value that they have of breaking themselves out of poverty as they grow up and become adults?
You see, my mom's double shift wasn't in vain. Low achiever, at risk, disregarded. I will break that chain. Pain, disease, death, cigarettes were to blame. But I overcame the block. And the shock when my grandpa's lung cancer caused by cigarettes was caught. Distraught and left alone. Had 3 generations in one home. Not broken, but awoken. Setting sights on CEO of independence as my goal. So I reject cigarettes to regain control.
Keep it fresh. Live tobacco-free.
So here you see a young lady that is never associated with an anti-smoking campaign, right? You wouldn't expect a girl like that to be the face of a healthy campaign. But she is telling you why she is, why it is important for her, why it is a part of the things that she cares about. And that challenges the thinking for others who see themselves like her, people who have never seen someone like her talk about being tobacco-free and talk about it as something critically important to all the things that she cares about in her life, with her family, with poverty, with addiction, and all the things that have kind of caused this struggle that she sees herself in. And that's what it looks like to begin to change the image, the face of health. Let's take a look at another example. This time we're looking at an example of supporting economic development with the idea of fixing food deserts. And food deserts are places where there's no access to healthy foods because there's no grocery store. So people end up buying food from convenience stores.
There's a lot about Virginia to be proud of. Its places, its hard-working people, its homegrown spirit. The Commonwealth is a great place to live. But more than 1.7 million Virginians are in places where they don't have healthy, fresh produce yet.
That's a shame, considering agriculture is our state's largest industry.
So, pledge your support and tell our leaders to back investments in grocery stores where they are needed the most. That's the seed of development that will generate an average of 250 jobs per store, making our communities and our economy healthy and strong. Plus, don't you think all Virginians deserve access to healthy food? Visit freshspotva.com to pledge your support today.
So this is an example of a policy change campaign. And the focus there is to convince legislators to support these new initiatives to put investments into grocery stores. Now, there were many legislators who already agreed with this, who already agreed with the idea that everyone deserves to be healthy. And there were other more conservative legislators who didn't really think that was their job to make everybody healthy. And so the message here was not to repeat the things that people already agreed on, but to find a different reason, a different way that someone who wouldn't necessarily be in support of these public health initiatives to find a way to support it through economic development, through associating being healthy with making these economies and these small communities that they care about stronger. And so now we're associating two things that before this ad were not associated before. Let's look at another example. We do a lot of work with very specific peer crowds, and one of them that we work with is hipsters. Hipsters are a fun group, but they are very, very skeptical, and they happen to have some of the highest smoking rates amongst young adults, higher than a lot of disparate populations that we talk about all the time, even like LGBT audiences and things like that. Hipsters tend to smoke the most. And so to get them to quit smoking, we had to find a way to make them feel like quitting smoking was designed for them. And here's what that looked like.
When I first started smoking, I was 15, probably in high school.
When I was 18,
16 years old.
I think it was like trying to be older than you are.
The reason that I decided to quit was because I was tired of the way I felt.
I felt like I was a slave to something. And I don't like being a slave to anybody or anything like that.
I wanted to join the commune group because I had friends joining it who wanted to quit together.
Definitely sounded like something that could be a helpful tool.
The fact that the meetings were out of the bar, at first I was like, wait, what? But I think the way it ended up working out was like, oh, I can hang out at a bar and not smoke. Like,
this group is the only way that I think that I could ever break the association between smoking and drinking.
So before I ever started the groups, I smoked about a pack and a half a day. And now I'm smoke-free.
Even though I haven't fully quit smoking, each group that I've done has helped me reduce the amount that I smoke.
If you're honestly thinking about quitting smoking, I think you owe it to yourself to take a look at Commune.
See my progress or join me by clicking the quit button on the Commune Facebook page.
So in this case, these hipsters were not willing to call the tobacco quit line. They're way too cool for that. And one of their biggest challenges was how not to smoke when they're drinking, since that was when they were usually smoking the most. And so our solution was, well, let's bring smoking cessation to the place that they smoke the most. And we created these cessation groups that met at bars once a week and focused on, brought a cessation counselor into the bar to give them that advice while they were there hanging out with their friends. And we saw a success rate equal or greater than what calling the quit line actually achieves, but in a place where hipsters were actually willing to do it. Which was a huge success. Again, by challenging the notion of what tobacco cessation looks like, what people who don't smoke look like. Let's look at another example. Now we're talking about being a busy mom, right? We just looked at that example earlier of the mom at the grocery store, right? She looked like she just had all the cards dealt to her that she ever needed, right? Everything was going great in her life. Well, those aren't usually the people that are struggling with eating healthy. It's usually busy moms that are struggling with that. And let's look at how we associated her life with eating healthy.
This is my mom, Sarah. She works and goes to school. And even though she's busy, she always makes time to grab dinner for our family. But today, it looks like she's changing what we usually eat. Are those French fries? Fried chicken, perhaps? Nope. She's bringing home rotisserie chicken and salad. A healthy choice that's lower in fat and low in cost, too. But will we like it? We love it!
Celebrate healthy choices that lead to more successful futures. Visit calfreshhealthyliving.org.
So we talked about a lot of the key things that we saw as flaws in that previous slide, and you can see how immediately some of those changed, right? This mom was not particularly skinny. She didn't look like the image of health. She looked very busy and frazzled. I mean, she had a baby attached to her most of the commercial, right? And we didn't provide a complicated solution. We recognized that she is busy, and we said, well, how would healthy eating work in her life? It would work by, instead of stopping at the fast food, stop at the grocery store and buy the pre-made rotisserie chicken that is sitting right there. It actually costs the same thing, and you can have your food just as fast for the same price, but way healthier, right? So we thought about, we didn't just tell a different audience to eat healthy, we thought about what it would look like for her to eat healthy. And one of the interesting things with this campaign that we've seen in focus groups is that even though every single ad is specific to a specific example, they tell us that it's taught them how to think about healthy eating. And they bring up other dishes and other foods that they're thinking of the same swaps in the same situations where they can eat healthier too. And the very last example is being a strong and confident LGBT person with living tobacco-free. Let's check that out.
I own every part of who I am, even the pieces I thought I had to hide. I've learned to embrace my complexity and reject any threat to it. Like smoking, which can damage nearly every part of my body. And I refuse to damage any part of who I am by smoking cigarettes.
This free life, freedom to be tobacco-free.
So now here we see a lesbian, a woman, associating her strength, her protection of her own body, her protection of the identity that she worked so hard to build, and associating that with the idea of being tobacco-free, right? That it wasn't worth damaging this thing that has taken me so much work to bring to life. Again, a completely different way of looking at living tobacco-free. With audience segmentation, these relevant associations, and message tailoring, you can make promises that reduce the burden of change for your audience. All you have to do is recognize what those burdens are and make that your focus rather than just kind of repeating the same messages with the same images over and over again. And so, if you like this message, I invite you to join us in San Diego. It's really close. It's like one of the closest American cities that you can get to. So think about that. And feel free to check out more information about any of these strategies and some more workshop videos on our YouTube channel. Thank you very much.